My name is Frank Hiley, and I'm going to be giving you a presentation about my scientific model of consciousness and the human brain, which explains spirituality and spiritual enlightenment. And this is a completely scientific theory. It's consistent with all the laws of science, and it has no spirits in this explanation of spirituality. Now, in order to explain spirituality, I first have to define spirituality, and I have an equation for that. Spirituality equals religion minus dogma. So if a religion says that this book here is the truth and you got to believe every word of this book, that's an example of dogma. Subtract that away from the religion and see what's left. That would be the spirituality. Both spirituality and religion cultivates a number of positive values such as love and forgiveness. And spirituality uses practices like prayer and meditation to achieve its goals. So my hypothesis is that spirituality developed between 40 and 100,000 years ago when human consciousness changed. Now, the reason for those particular dates is that 100,000 years ago is when humans started to intentionally bury their dead, and 40,000 years ago is where we started to make carvings that could represent a fertility goddess, for example. So that's the evidence that there might be some spirituality or religion going on at that time. Now, this change in consciousness was facilitated by the development of modern language. And my model is that the language vocabulary would have gradually increased with time. The last common ancestor with the great apes was about 6 million years ago. And the chimpanzees in the wild right now have something like 30 or maybe 100 call signs. And that's vocal call signs and also gestures. They use both of those to signal each other. So probably 6 million years ago, we had 30 to 100 words. And gradually over time, we added more and more words to it. And there must have been some genetic changes that made it much easier for us to invent and remember words and understand what they mean. And gradually over time, we added more and more vocabulary. We learned how to start fires and make tools and all that kind of stuff. And then around 40 to 100,000 years ago is where we crossed some kind of a threshold and kind of into the modern vocabulary range. And that's when spirituality developed. However, language is really only the I/O mechanism for the true cause of this change in consciousness, which is the development of conceptual worlds. And it started out with a conceptual model of the real world. You know, we would have words for all the objects in our world, and we could talk about the objects that way. But it then became a purely conceptual world as we invented more and more abstract concepts. So abstract concepts don't correspond to something out in the physical world. And that's what caused this development of spirituality. And this conceptual world changed who we are. Ancient humans would have identified with the body. That's who I am, is that body. And modern humans identify with the conceptual self, the I, me, my. That's the autobiographical narrative me. That's who I am. Now, this conceptual world did a lot of wonderful things, like it allowed humans to populate the entire Earth, and it gave us science and technology and everything we see around us here. But it's not good for living a happy life. That's the problem that the conceptual self in particular caused. And spirituality is the cure for that problem.